but especially with some of the transfers that they're bringing in as well, too. Yeah, I think they're, one of the problem areas on the line, particularly on the defensive line, was at end, you lose Max Michel. CJ Bazili is hurt through most of spring practices as well. And, Max Michel was a huge loss. But I think on the defensive line, they've got George Wallow coming back. You lose Damon Williams as well, another big name. But, they're one thing that Maurice Linguist did a very good job at as coach and that his defensive staff did. They built a lot of depth on the defensive line, particularly in the middle. And they brought in, a couple defensive end. They brought in Billy O'Byrne from Ball State. If he didn't play last year, they brought in Antonio Colclo from, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, from Monmouth as well, too. And those are guys with experience just to build some of that depth up. They've got a couple freshmen and sophomores coming in also. That is one thing they really want to do, just build that depth and get those guys those reps so that they're kind of looking for the long term, if these guys stay around with the transfer portal.
So we started talking a little bit about the defensive side of the ball, but they have a new defensive coordinator in Joe Bowen. He comes over from Miami, Ohio, where he was the linebackers coach and the running game coordinator. What did they share? What kind of defensive scheme they're going to play here in 2024?
I think they're going to continue with the 4-2-5. Okay. They had kind of gone with that scheme during the spring game. They had Jaden Lewis playing more at the nickelback as opposed to just the traditional linebacker as well. So, and he did really well. He had 2 interceptions. Another local Buffalo kid from Bennett High School here in town. Bennett's state powerhouse in football here as well, too. So they're probably going to go with that. They got a big boost linebacker, though, with Sean Dolak returning. The unique kids. I'm naming all these local Buffalo kids. Sean Dolak he's from the Buffalo area. He was actually the Buffalo News Player of the Year in football in 2018. He had gotten hurt last year. It was against Louisiana, limited to 4 games. And he was the nation's leading solo tackler in 2022. And he entered the transfer portal after the season. I thought he was going to go to Syracuse. I thought with NIL opportunities, it being 2.5 hours away from home, new coaching staff, I was like, but he went to Utah State. And he was at the spring game for UB. I didn't think anything of it. I said he's probably home after the semester's over, whatever. And like a week later, he's announcing he's transferring back to UB. So that is a huge boost for a linebacking group that was very, very thin. They lost Joe Andreessen, graduate transfer from Bryant, who is now with the Bills, signed as an undrafted free agent out of a rookie invite. And they've got Red Murdoch coming back as well, who he really offset Joe Andreessen really, really well. Really learned a lot from Sean Dolak as well. And I'm really eager to see how that scheme and how that working relationship between those two, between Sean Dolak and Red Murdoch, really rekindles, for lack of a better word. And I want to see what Red learned having played as a redshirt freshman, basically almost the entire season after Sean Dolak got hurt. I'm really eager to see how he puts that into action this year.
Is Sean fully recovered from the injuries that kind of plagued him last season?
Well, he was practicing in spring practice at Utah State, so probably as well. But he was in a walking boot. He had a scooter. It was that serious enough to just sideline him for the rest of the season. So, I would hope so. I mean, I think UB would hope so as well.
So we talked about the defensive line and how deep it is and how you don't really have much of a concern. Did anyone stand out to you?
Oh, on the defensive line?
Yeah.
Okay. George Wallow definitely did. He's actually stood out the last couple of years as well. He's a guy that they plugged him in, at defensive tackle, and I remember watching him 3 years ago and thinking, this guy played in high school last year. This guy's like a couple years out of high school. It was a seamless integration, for lack of a better term. I have high expectations for him this year as well too. And I have very high expectations for him. I think this is his time to really be a leader on the line. I think even though CJ Bazili missed spring practices, he was a guy who really came in during the season and brought a lot of intensity. He was a very good piece to offset Max Michel, another super intense guy, defensive end. So, I think those two, there's the two that you really got to keep an eye out for, George and CJ.
So moving over to the defensive backfield, that looks like it might be a strength of this 2024 team, even though they did lose their second leading tackler and 2023 All-MAC first-teamer Devin Grant to Syracuse. Caleb offered also to the portal, and Demetrius Harris and Amonte Struthers graduated, but they returned guys like Marcus Fuqua, Charles McCartherins, and Clevester Hines III, Solomon Brown, and Jaden Oliver. How did the
Trey. that's how we just call him Trey. I butchered the name too.
How did those guys look in the spring?
They looked strong, especially with Jaden Lewis pulling back and playing the nickel back. You might as well have had a fifth defensive back there as well too. One good thing about Devin Grant, he took pressure off Marcus Fuqua. Devin really was the ball hawk, and it really gave Marcus more of a chance to kind of spread his wings as a tackler, to roam the field a little bit more as well too. But Marcus was a third-team All-American safety a couple of years ago too. So again, he is the leader, and it is also a very deep position group. One of the interesting things, Jonathan Russo, whose older brother Greg Russo plays for the Bills, he just committed to UB yesterday. And he's a safety. And I'm looking at their depth charts, looking at the years, and I said, well, God, this group, the only guy that we're going to lose after the season is Marcus Fuqua. So this is one of those years Marcus really has a chance to step up and be a leader and really kind of take control of this group and say, hey, guys, this is where I'm going to set the tone. I'm leaving. I want you guys to do this.
Did in the spring, did anyone step up to assume that role that was vacated by Devin Grant, or to be determined?
That's to be determined. It still is to be determined.
All right. Well, I asked you on the offensive side, so I got to ask you on the defensive side. If you had to pick a defensive player to have a breakout type season in 2024, who are you picking?
Sean Dolak. I'm picking him not a breakout season, but a roarback season as well, too. I mean, the expectations were high for him last year. I mean, he was on a pretty solid pace before he got hurt to, not so much repeat what he did, but again, about consistency. 97 solo tackles is not an easy thing to do, but to perform, to show up, to bring that same level of intensity. And Joe Anderson did a great job, and so did Red Martin, of stepping in when Sean went down. But I think Sean's going to come back in with an intensity and the attitude of, I'm not finished here. I'm going to help this team, help myself, and help this team.
If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you are listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you all for your support. And until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.